What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to teach you how to set up your DV12K6 series of dual 12-inch car audio subwoofers. As you can see, it comes with the speakers themselves with this awesome plexi enclosure that actually has LED lights built into it that really makes it stand out from the rest, and a positive and negative wire so we can connect the lights to your battery or amp. Now we already have an amp set up in our vehicle, but if you need help with that step, check out our video on how to install an amp to your car. Now an important thing to keep in mind is that you want to match the power of your amp to the power of the subwoofers. So since the DV12K6 series are rated at 1200 watts RMS, you want to be sure to match that with an amp that can produce around 1200 watts RMS. Now don't worry if your amp produces more RMS than that. For example, in our setup here, we're using a Krypton M4, which is rated at 1500 watts RMS at 1 ohm, which is totally fine because we know our amp will produce the 1200 watts RMS needed to really drive our subs. This will also keep our amp from getting overheated or overworked, and will give it a longer lifespan over the repeated use. And if you're using an amp that produces a little less power than 1200 watts RMS, that's totally fine too. You just need to make sure not to clip your subs by turning the gain knob up on your amp too much, which will lead to damaging your subs. Now, a quick trick used on how to get an idea of your amp's RMS rating: multiply the fuse by around 10. This works really well on Class D amplifiers. So if we multiply that 150 by 10, we get 1500, which is the rated power of that amp. Now if you're using a Class A or B amplifier, you can multiply your fuse rating by around 9 to get a fair rating, only because Class A or B amplifiers are less efficient and draw more current. Now if you're doing an SPL build where you want to do things like burp your subs or so on, you'll need to match it with an amp that has way more power than just the rated power of the subs. The peak power of a sub, which is what it can take for a 2 to 3 second burp, is usually around 4 times the continuous RMS power. So if you wanted to burp these subs, we would recommend getting an amp 3 to 4 times more than the sub's RMS power handling. Another thing you want to make sure is to match the impedance of your subs to the stable impedance of your amplifier. So in this case, I'm using the DV12K6D1, which is 2 subs ran down to 1 ohm. So I want to match it with a 1 ohm stable amplifier like my Krypton M4. So if you're using the DV12K6D2, you can match it to a 2 ohm stable amp that can put out the rated power at 2 ohms. You could use a 2 ohm stable amplifier like our DV15, which produces 1500 watts of power at 2 ohms. You can even use a 1 ohm stable amplifier that does the rated power of the subs at 2 ohms. For example, our Krypton M5 does 1300 watts of power at 2 ohms. If you use a 1 ohm stable amp running at 2 ohms, your amp will run really cool and with great efficiency that saves your car battery. You'll also hear increased sound quality because your amp is running so cool. So once the sub is in your car, all you need to do is run it to your amp with some speaker wire. So you're just going to take the positive and negative ends of your speaker wire and plug them into the positive and negative terminals here on the side of the sub. Then you'll take the other ends and run them to the positive and negative terminals on your amp. After that, you can feed your cables in and tighten the terminals back up to lock them in place. Now the power of the lights is run from their own separate terminals on the side of the enclosure, and there's a few different ways we can power them. You can run the included positive and negative LED wire from the terminals on the side of the enclosure to the battery of your vehicle. You can also run the positive LED wire to the accessories wire in your car, but in most cases, it's easier to run the cable right to your amplifier. Now for this setup, you'll actually want to cut one of the ends of the wire so that the bare wire touches the base of the terminals and powers the lights. In case the wire isn't already attached to the enclosure and the terminals, you'll just want to take out the screws of the enclosure, feed them through the holes of the end of the speaker wire, and tighten the screws back up to lock them in place. Then you'll take the bare wire ends and plug the positive wire into the remote terminal on your amp and plug the negative wire into the ground terminal of your amp. The big benefit of having the lights set up to the amp is that it won't drain the battery from your car when it's off. Now there's also a 3-way switch we can use to set the color of the LED lights between blue, white, or we can turn the lights off completely by setting the switch to the middle. So now we have everything all set up with the sub. So if I go ahead and turn on my car, you'll notice that the LED lights light up, letting us know that the sub is ready to go. So I have my phone connected to Bluetooth. Let's play some music and hear how the subs sound. Let's go check it out in the back. Oh man, that's nuts. this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your DV12K6 series of dual 12-inch car audio subwoofers. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.